Hey everybody. This is a continuation on the whole patchbay thing. So what I'm planning to do is I have three patch bays now. These are 96 point TT patch bays, the small guys, and I'm going to add a fourth. Um, and the idea, it's really, as I mentioned in the other video about patch bays, the art of patch bays is not using them. You want to basically you want to get the flexibility that they offer, but you want to make the most minimal signal connections possible, which means exploiting normaling as much as possible. Quick recap: normaling is when the top row automatically feeds the bottom row of a patch bay without having to use a patch cable at all. And half normaling means it would still feed from the top to the bottom, but you can also run a patch cable from the top someplace else and it'll split the signal, and you can actually do both. So half normaling is interesting where that's concerned, although you can run into grounding issues sometimes with that. So that's full normal versus half normal. And then you can also, of course, just break the normal and not have any connection between the top and the bottom. But so this looks inefficient, but really, like, what it is there's open space, and also just I'm writing words. I'm not, actually seeing holes with assignments, but I leave some open space. But the idea is to get a more coherent and efficient flow. Real quick again, it's top to bottom. We're doing mic inputs. So the top row is the snake inputs. So there's 32 channels of that from the live room and the booths. And then those normal to preamp sends. And so there's 32 channels of that. I have a couple of holes that I still need to fill, but for the most part, they're all taken up. I think I have 28 right now, something like that. So then after the preamp sends, we're down to the next bay, right? So there's no normal from bay to bay, but what you have is the preamp returns on the top line. Now, this is where it gets a little weird, and this is just for the API box users. One of the things about something clicked. One of the things about the box is that it has, like, the left side of the console is just for recording. Well, not just for recording, but it's for recording. And so it has features that the summing side, the right side, does not have, which is like, well, first of all, it has the 500 series gear, the slots, but also it has the mic preamps, and it has direct outputs. Now, the box offers two direct outputs, actually. You can go right from the preamp out with nothing else affecting it. Or you can go, from post fader, these blue faders. And honestly, like, I don't think I'm ever gonna want to use directly from the preamp. I'm always gonna want to insert, the 500 series gear, and not to mention the fact that the compressors that the box comes with, there's two 527 compressors. Their default state is as a linked stereo compressor for the mix bus, but you can also assign them to channels 1 through 4. Now, there's only two of them, but basically you can assign, you can see, like, 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So you can pick any of the four. So with that in mind, channels 1 through 4, you can have your EQ or whatever you've put in the 500 series and those compressors. And there's even a button to move the placement of the compressor. It's normally before the 500 series, and there's a button to move it after if you so desire. So at any rate, so that's what's going on with the box. It makes things a little weird because, obviously I need more than 8 inputs when I'm recording. And so it, basically what I've got going on is direct outputs from channels 1 through 8 are feeding directly to my interface, to the links. And then 9 through 32 have to go to normal to other preamps, outboard preamps, and whether it's Fern or the Neves or whatever. There's also Great River, these Hazel rigs, Focusrites, whatever. And in that case, so where the direct outs are feeding directly to the interface without going through the patch bay, all of the other preamp connections are going to go through the bay, which means that I also need inputs to the converter, to the links in the bay. So right there, you can see how this can get weird, where like channels 1 through 8 sort of become their own universe. They're reacting in their own way, and it's a similar, anyway, yeah. So, and the other thing that's going on is I have 32 channels on the interface, but for mixing, for summing, this board has 24, and it has 24 plus 2. There's the program sum input is like an extra 2 inputs, but I'm mostly using that as a reverb return. So really it's 24 channels. So then I have 8 left over from my 32. So 2 of those are going to be for the speakers. So then I have 6 left over. And so that becomes, there's lots of different ways I might want to use that. But again, those 6, or really those 8, need to come up on the bay. And actually, I misspoke. The 2, I don't need them for speakers. I need them for the mix, basically. And what I do is I generally have those 2 coming in on a 2-track input. And the reason that I do that is the output of the mixer, I'm sending back to my DAW, and I'm hitting it with more like a peak limiter on the way in. So I want to be able to monitor the final output with the peak limiter. And so that's why I have that coming into the 2-track input. If I want to hear what's coming out of the board before it goes back to the computer, I can just switch to the program output. But at any rate, so bottom line, I have 8 outputs, 25 through 32 from the interface that also need to come up in the bay. So you see how this starts getting a little twisted, a little complicated. So like 8 sends are not going through the bay. 8 returns are not, need to go through the bay. And for the other line inputs, for the summing, those I want to come directly from the interface. I don't want them going through the bay. I have every one of these channels, the summing inputs and the left side, have inserts. So any outboard gear that I want to use, I'm going to do that on an insert, but it's nice to have it go directly from the interface directly to the API, in case I don't want to use any gear on it, at all. It's a direct connection. It's nice to be able to avoid the bay, if you don't need it. So anyway, that's my setup, but it's a pretty common issue with this particular mixer. So anyone who's considering this, it does get a little weird. You know, so let's go back to this. So as you see, mic ins, that's the snake. Preamp sends, now that's going to be the same because there's 8 preamps in the API. Now here's where it gets different. So on patchbay 2, you can see on 9 through 24, I have, and actually it's really 9 through 32, I have preamp returns, okay? But on 1 through 8, there's no preamp return because I'm actually going directly to the interface from the API. So it's not hitting the patch bay at all. So instead, I'm putting the insert sends for 1 through 8 because this side does still have inserts. So I'm going to put those there instead. And then, so now here's where it gets interesting. And this is where it becomes a really custom job. And that's what patch bays are all about, is customizing, to your workflow, and hopefully something that other people can understand too. But again, it's the combination of flexibility and also just efficiency. So I've got my 4 purple compressors down there. Those are the Action comps. They're FET compressors. I like them a lot. So I have those on normaled to 5 through 8 inserts. The idea being that I can put those 527 compressors on 1 through 4 as needed, and then I have 5 through 8 covered with the purples. And at some point I'll probably buy 2 more, and so I'm fully covered. Then what I have going on 9 through really 9 through 14 or 13 really. I have some outboard gear normaled. So the preamps 9 through 12, I have these guys. So these are the BAE 1073s, and these are the same, more or less the same model, the 1073 equalizers, also by BAE. So I have those EQs in 9 through 12, and then 13, 14 API 550As, and sorry about the shadows. Okay, and so at that point, I run out of channel equalizers. And keep in mind, I have also these in the board. So channels 1 through 8 already has, these EQs. So basically, equalizers, out to 14. And then 15 and 16 are actually blank right now for me. I don't have preamps assigned to them, so there's also nothing normal to them either. I've dedicated 19 and 20 and 21 and 22 to drums, and let me see. So this is how complicated it can get. Like, you start off with trying to imagine my average recording setup. So I've got my toms, rack tom, floor tom, and my room mics sort of dedicated to 19, 20, 21, and 22. And that would be Great River preamps for the toms and the Chandler preamps for the rooms. Chandler's, Great Rivers. And right now I don't have channel EQs for those. I could, of course, patch them in if I decided I needed to do that. Or, I could just hit them with plugins once I get in as well. Again, room to grow, right? So I may actually add some eventually. Sorry, I'm focusing on the wrong section here. Hold on. So there we go. So anyway, I have that, but I do have them normal to compressors. So the toms I have normal to the distressors, and the room mics to the fatso. And then now here's an example of just trying to be flexible and doing what's best for my setup. So I have the output of the distressors and the fatsos and the outputs of all of this gear start the top row of patch bay 3, right? So you're normaling top to bottom, right? So what you want is your inputs on the bottom, your outputs on the top, and then they normal to the next inputs and outputs, right? That's sort of how you daisy chain down a patch bay. So I have the outputs of the distressor and the fatso normaled to links sends. So they're going to go right back to the to the converter, right? Now you'll see I've got links send 9 through 16 down here on the other bay. That's okay. On the back of this bay, it's all DB25 connectors. So you're moving in banks of 8. That's another factor that gets confusing. Like, you can set things up that in a way that looks fantastic on paper, and then you get into the back and you start actually plugging things in. You realize, oh crap, these need to be in groups of 8. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you're using DB25 connectors. But it's entirely convenient and possible for me to take this bank of 8 sends to the converter and move it up to this bay, because I don't have extra gear. Now, if I get more equalizers, it's very simple for me to just take 17 through 24 sends and bump it down to this bay. And there's room for it, it's fine, but it makes more sense right now with the gear that I have to have it come out of there. Okay, so back to over here. Now what I've done here is I've actually made a daisy chain. So we're going from preamps to EQs, the BAE and the API EQs. And then I've got, after the EQs, a level of compressors after them. So we've got the MC77s, that's the purple 1176s. Love those. And the LA2s. Now these are actually Audioscape clones of LA2s. They just call them Optos. And love those too. And then 13 is the V-Comp. It's basically like the retro, the stay level gates type compressor. And 13 tends to be my lead vocal channel. So, so right now, that would be the API 550 EQ into the V-Comp. Sorry, they're not lined up properly there, but that's 13 to 13 is what's going on. And again, so this is the new bay. The 4th bay will be the returns from those compressors, and then the sends to the links, right? So, the funny thing is like, okay, so that's top to bottom on channels, 1 through 24 or 32. Now we move over here, because these each one of these bays is 48 channels across times 2, so 96. And this is where we kind of got everything else going on. So and it does get a little confusing, but this is why it's not easy. It's really it's a brain buster, and it's why you will usually rearrange things. It took me getting it set up and running to figure out what I wanted to change and how I really wanted to make it work. So like in 25 through 32, that's this Focusrite, this 8-channel Focusrite preamp, and that's a really unsung great preamp. It's really actually very nice. And one of the things that it gets unsung for is that it's one of the only preamps on the market that has like a 5K ohm impedance available. So you can do ribbon mics without having to adjust the impedance with that which is really nice. Anyway, so same thing, snake inputs to preamps. ISA 828 is the model for the Focusrite. Preamp returns. And again, where I moved the link sends 17 through 24 up to here, I'm going up one more level for the link sends to the Focusrite, because frankly, I don't have outboard gear. I don't have enough compressors and EQs to dedicate anything to the Focusrite. And, to be honest, it's pretty rare that I'm going over 25 channels anyway. And if I decide that there's a session that I prefer the Focusrite, that's what the patch bay is for. I can just patch the output, the preamp returns to any of the other gear, and then patch it back to the link send, and we're fine. So the flexibility is always there. But in the meantime, if I'm using it as spill channels, room mics, whatever, and I don't care about whether I have an equalizer or a compressor, this will still fully normal all the way from the snake input to the interface. No patching. And that's what you want. You want that kind of efficiency. Okay, so then down here, and we're back on patch bay 3, color coding helps. There's this whole row of special connections on the back of the API. So there's the program insert send. Program is what API calls their master channel. So the master channel has an insert send. I use that a lot. I use that for mastering. I use that in every mix. My workflow right now is really that I'm mixing in the box, mostly with this SSL UC1 at the moment. And then I'm summing in the API. And I'm not using analog gear in my mixes for the most part, because I don't want to have to recall it. But what I am doing is I'm hitting the 527 compressor for the mix, and then I'm using the insert on the master bus, and I'm hitting the mastering quality gear, which is the Fern compressor, the Pultec EQs, and the Chandler curve bender EQ. And I can recall these pieces in under 5 minutes, so it's the recall is really not that big a deal, and we get a huge bonus in sound quality, both from running through the API console and through all that gear. So I use this a lot. I use that insert a lot. So again, this is about my workflow, making it easiest for me. My typical signal path is, we're summing in the API. It hits the API compressor first, and then I'm hitting usually the Fern compressor after that, then the Pultec, and then the curve bender. And for the most part, that's fine. That's the order that I like. There is some issue with the curve bender, this particular piece, something about the impedance on the input. They even told me this at Chandler. It doesn't play well when it's not last. Like basically when there's gear after it, it doesn't well, when there's transformer balanced gear after it, it doesn't. It can cause distortion. But it's always very happy to be last in the chain. And I guess the fact that the links balanced inputs are electronically balanced keeps things clean. But it definitely wasn't happy being in front of some of these pieces. So, but anyway, that's my signal flow. So basically, coming out of the master insert, I'm always going to the Fern compressor. That's the VT7. So we have the send there, and the return comes up on 4 there. Now, this is where it gets wonky. Like what I would have loved to do is have it, daisy chain down all that gear completely normaled. The problem is this whole banks of 8 thing gets really, it gets to be a pain. Now, I may come up with a better solution for this. For right now, I ended up with all of this gear on one bank of 8. So I will have to patch. But at least, the inputs and outputs, there's no at least. That's just what it is. But anyway, so VT7 patch to Pultec, patch to curve bender. And the reason why I have this the way it is I wanted the VT7 to be normaled from the master insert send. so there was no patching there. And then this PCM 92, that's a Lexicon reverb, and that I am using on aux sends 1 and 2 on the mixer, and so I wanted that to be normaled as well. So that's why that's where it is, and I have to patch anyway, so what difference does it make, really? So okay, so anyway, the only thing that I saved a little bit of, and again, these aren't lining up, but they do line up. So the curve bender return is on the top row of patchbay 4, curve bender being the last in my mastering chain. So what I am able to do is put the program insert return, and it's going to be a little lonely there on its own bank of 8, but I think it's worth it. And again, we may add stuff later, but to let that normal to the insert return. So again, just working hard to normal as much as we possibly can. And on this last group here, the right side of the board, the summing side, all has inserts as well. We already took care of the left side's inserts there, but the right side, again, I'm just sort of putting this stuff here. It's not really serving much of a purpose. But again, like what I did was I left room open. So as I'm adding gear, I can fill it in between and it will normal. So the insert sends from 9 through 24 would normal to any gear that gets filled in there. I left room for the output of that gear there, and then the insert returns are there. Now, in the meantime, the reason why I was a little low priority about this is because my plan is not to use that really. I don't see myself using a lot of analog equipment in my mixing. And as far as the recording goes, that's not going to come out of the inserts on the summing side. So honestly, I don't really see myself using these inserts that much, but you never know. And if something comes along where it's like, hey, we want to do an all analog mix, then great, we have the inserts. I just have to manually patch in all the other gear. But that's why you have a patch bay. That's the flexibility. It's 5 minutes to just run patch cables. And really no big deal. Okay, so then we get to, remember I said we had 8 channels from the links that are not going to line inputs on the mixer. So that's where they come up here. And again, we're on the top row of patch bay 3. And those are normaling to the 2-track inputs on the mixer, which is really convenient. So again, I can set up, what have you. So actually, this is sort of interesting. If I'm going to have, a dedicated Q send, sorry, I'm getting lost now. Anyway, I can have my mix output be 31 and 32 and come into 2-track D, or 25 and 26 and come into 2-track A, and that'll work out fine. Then down here we have the dedicated Q send from the mixer. So with this board, aux 3 and 4, you can make each of these a Q, and you can build a Q mix for the headphones. But what's even better is you can just tell the board to take the Q mix from the control room. So what you're hearing on your speakers is what they're hearing in the Q. And I have the Behringer, headphone system, the 16-channel mixers. So what I have set up is channels 1 and 2 on that 16-channel on the 16-channel mixers, headphone mixers, is the Q. So basically, whatever's coming out of my speakers is feeding 1 and 2 automatically, and I don't have to do anything to make that happen. Again, because they're normaled. So the Q send is taking right from the control room there, and then it's coming out on channels 33 and 34 on the patch bay, but it doesn't really matter what those numbers are. And it's normaling to headphone outputs 1 and 2. So again, really convenient. I don't have to do anything. It's automatic. If an outside engineer comes in, they don't have to do anything. Whatever they're listening to will automatically come up on those channels for performers. So that's really convenient. Anyway, then that's my current setup. You can see there's unused space, and room to grow is good. Right now, I don't have that 4th patch bay, and I'm making it all work in a very cramped manner with a lot of the stuff squeezed in on the right side. So I'm really looking forward to getting this 4th bay and getting a little more flow happening, and just getting it more ergonomic. It's it's a never-ending job. Just make it better and better. But these are the thoughts that go into designing an efficient patch bay. And one of the things I didn't mention is that one of the things that's really cool is these BAE 1073 modules. This 500 series rack by Fredenstein has switches in the back that let you cascade. So it's very quickly I can just turn these into dedicated channel strips, and then that simplifies this patching even more, because what happens is it'll go right from the 9 through 12 preamps. There won't be this return patch, there won't be a send patch. It'll just go right from those preamps right down there to that output. So that skips even more back and forth cabling and connections. And again, that's the name of the game. It's one of the reasons, even though it kind of makes them less flexible, I still keep equalizers in this side of the board, because that short connection is really beautiful. Not having to go through the bay, not having to go through any extra cabling. You hear it. You hear the difference. Yeah, that's it. All right, I hope this was helpful to anybody, and feel free to leave me comments. And if you haven't already, do please subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care. Bye-bye.